Now, the US and Russia are giving conflicting accounts about how an American surveillance drone plunged into the Black Sea. Washington says 2 Russian jets tried to intercept the drone before striking a propeller. Russia's ambassador to the US has denied any collision took place and claimed the aircraft's presence was a provocation. Here's our North America correspondent, Peter Bowes.
An American MQ-9 drone and 2 Russian fighter jets. Their encounter, according to the Pentagon, lasted up to 40 minutes in international airspace. They were over the Black Sea, where tensions have risen ever since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, and where US surveillance aircraft have been flying regularly since the start of the war last year. The Pentagon says one of the Russian jets moved in front of the drone and eventually forced the unmanned aerial vehicle, or UAV, to crash into the sea. It was a complete loss of the aircraft.
We are continuing to assess exactly what happened, but I think based on the actions of the Russian pilots, it's clear that it was unsafe, unprofessional, and I think the actions speak for themselves. What we saw, again, were fighter aircraft dumping fuel in front of this UAV, and then getting so close to the aircraft that it actually damaged the propeller on the MQ-9. We assess that it likely caused some damage to the Russian aircraft as well.
Russia's ambassador to the US called the drone's presence a provocation. He said the aircraft's transponder, which is used to avoid mid-air collisions, was switched off, and it had violated what Russia calls the temporary airspace regime established since it attacked Ukraine. The US says the Russian pilots were reckless. But was it deliberate or a careless mistake that caused the drone to crash into the sea? An error that risks escalating tensions between Washington and Moscow.
The Pentagon is engaging in diplo speak here, but it's clear that if you're flying in front of the drone, slowing down to match speed, dumping fuel on it, that this is a deliberate attempt to bring down the drone. Absolutely. The Pentagon announced with this that this isn't the first time that they've had these kinds of incidents, but this seems to be the worst. The first time they've really attempted, the Russians have attempted to bring the drone all the way down instead of just harassing it. So I think it is a serious escalation at this point.
This is the first publicly acknowledged confrontation between the US and Russia since its invasion of Ukraine. For now, it's led to a war of words, but the longer-term consequences are far from clear. Peter Bowes, BBC News.
From Kyiv, our diplomatic correspondent James Landale outlines how this could play out between the 2 countries now.
I think both sides will do their very best to avoid this escalating throughout this conflict over the last year since Russia invaded Ukraine. Both Russia and NATO and the United States have made huge efforts to avoid any form of escalation. Both sides have made it clear they are aware of the risks of that. So I think that, yes, there will be very stiff language used by the United States in protest diplomatically, but I think they will do their utmost to make sure that this doesn't spiral out into some kind of further military confrontation. That said, I think the Americans will demand explanations from the Russians as to what they were doing. And I think that at some point it wouldn't surprise me if film of what happened emerges that will challenge probably one of the accounts that we've just heard in Peter's report. But we're not at that point yet.
James Landale.